So hello guys, this is my summary for the Chapter 9 Transport Layer. The Transport Layer provides transport-related services by dividing data receiving from an application into segments, adding a header to identify and manage each segment, and using the header information to reassemble the segment back into application data, passing the assembled data to the correct application. UDP and TCP are common transport layer protocols. UDP datagrams and TCP segment have header added in front of the data that includes a source port number and destination port number. These port numbers enables data to be directed to the correct application running on the destination computer. Um, TCP that does not pass any data to the network until it knows that the destination is ready to receive it. TCP then manage the flow of data and resends any data segment that are not acknowledged as being received at the destination. TCP uses mechanism of handshaking timer, acknowledgement messages, and dynamic window to the achieve reliability. The reliability process, however, imposes overhead on the network in terms of much larger segment header and more network traffic between the source and the destination. If the application data needs to be delivered across the network quickly, or if network bandwidth cannot support the overhead control message being changed between the source and the destination system, UDP will be the developer preferred transport layer protocol. UDP provides none of the TCP reliability features. However, this does not necessarily mean that the communication itself is unreliable. There may be mechanisms in application layer protocols and services that process loss of delayed datagrams if the application has this requirement. So the application developer decided the transport layer protocol the best meets the requirements for the application. It is important to remember that the other layers all play a part in data network communication and influences its performance. So, so the port number groups. The Internet Assigned Numbers Authority or IANA is the standard body responsible for assigning various addressing standards including port numbers. There are different types of port numbers. Well-known ports, the number 0 to 1023, registered port number 1024 to 49151, and the dynamic or private ports number 49152265535. So the difference between those three is um, so between those three is the well-known ports, numbers of 0 to 1023. These numbers are reserved for services and application. They are commonly used for application such as web browser, email client, and remote clients. Access client by connecting to the specific port is associated service. Registered port numbers 1024 to 49151. These port numbers are assigned by IANA to requesting entity to use with a specific process of application. These processes are primarily individuals application that a user has chosen to install rather than common application that would receive a well-known port number. For example, Syscars registered port 1985 for its hot standby routing protocol process. Dynamic or private ports, they are also known as ephemeral ports. These are usually assigned dynamically by the client OS when a connection to the service is installed. The dynamic port is then used to identify the client application during the communication. TCP flow control congestion avoidance. When congestion occurs in a network, it results in the packet being discarded with the overload router. When packets connecting TCP segment don't reach their destination, they're left unacknowledged by determining the rate at which TCP segment are sent but not acknowledged. The source can assume a certain level of network congestion. Whenever there is a congestion, retransmission of lost TCP segment from the source will occur. If the retransmission is not properly controlled, the additional retransmission of the TCP segment can make the congestion even worse. Not only the new packets with the TCP segment will introduce into the network, but the feedback effect of the retransmitted TCP segment there were lost and will also add to the congestion. To avoid the control congestion, TCP employs several congestion handling mechanism, timer, and algorithms. If the source determines that the TCP segments are either not being acknowledged or not acknowledged in a timely manner, then it can reduce the number of bytes in send before receiving an acknowledgement. UDP low overhead versus reliability. UDP is a simple protocol that provides the basic transport layer function. It has much lower overhead than the TCP. This is not connection oriented and does not offer the sophisticated retransmission sequencing and flow control mechanism provide reliability. This does not mean that the application that use UDP are always unreliable, nor does it mean that UDP is not an inferior protocol. It simply means that these functions are not provided with the transport layer protocol and must be implemented elsewhere if required. The low overhead of the UDP makes it very desirable for protocols that make simple request and reply transaction. For example, using TCP and DHCP could introduce unnecessary network traffic. If there's a problem with the request of the reply, the devices simply send the request again if not response is received. Um, Next is the UDP datagram reassembly. Like segment with the TCP, when UDP datagrams are sent into the destination, they often take different paths and arrive with the wrong order. UDP does not track sequence numbers the way TCP does. UDP has no way to reorder the datagrams to their transmission order. Therefore, UDP simply reassembles the data in order that it was reserved or received and forwarded to its application. If the data sequence is important to the application must identify the proper sequence and determining how the data should be processed. So, application that use TCP. TCP is a great example of how the different layer of the TCP or IP protocol suite have specified role. TCP handles all the tasks associated with dividing the data stream into segments, providing reliability, controlling data flow, and that reordering of segment. TCP frees the application from having to manage any of these tasks. Applications like those show can simply send the data streaming to the transport layer and use the service of the TCP. So that's my summary for the chapter 9 the transport layer.